Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Social media and the state's functioning has very closely been connected, particularly in today's viral living, from states' attempt to fact-check to online troll media, irrespective of the political parties. Amid it all, you have social media outreach, Chief Minister Yogi style. Outreach or overreach, we leave it to you to decide. From life term for anti-national posts to rewards for social media content creators, the policy spells it all. But the devil also lies in the details. Influencers can earn up to 8 lakh rupees per month on social media by sharing the government's schemes and initiatives on their platforms, which is promotion or singing praise. That's the only condition. An anti-national post, according to the policy, could land you in jail from 3 years to life term. What is anti-national? That though isn't defined yet.
देश के कई प्रदेशों में इस तरह की व्यवस्था चल रही है। हमारे यहाँ ज़्यादा स्पेस है, ज़्यादा जगह है, ज़्यादा लोग सोशल मीडिया के माध्यम से रोजगार पा सके, सरकार का ऐसा प्रयास है। और कार्रवाइयाँ तो पहले से ही होती रही है। जो साइबर क्राइम है, जो उसके अपराधी हैं, उसको हम कभी नहीं छोड़ते हैं। बहुत व्यवस्थित तरीके से इस चीज़ को सरकार ने लाया है और सोशल मीडिया से जुड़े, खास तौर पे डिजिटल मीडिया से जुड़े तमाम लोगों ने कल से इसका अभिनंदन किया है। हम लोगों से भी काफ़ी स्वागत किया है, उन लोगों ने बातचीत किया है, तो एक अच्छा अवसर है।
Concerns are being raised about the inclusion of what the policy claims to be anti-national posts and already existing sections that deal with this, including not only the IT Act, but also the new Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita for that matter.
If the government takes a view that they want to act against persons for comments that they find offensive, they may do so by contract. That will attract a breach of such a contract, would attract civil liability or penal consequences, penalties, but not penal consequences. Of course, and only if there is a breach of the criminal law, can criminal sanctions be brought in against any person. Therefore, while the policy is seems to be rather strong, it cannot act beyond the contours of the criminal law, and no action can be taken for any comment which the state government in its own view finds offensive, unless it is a breach of something which is punishable by criminal law.
The opposition has strongly opposed this move. Congress has claimed that this is a move against not only freedom of expression, but is also against press freedom.
That this policy is also going to make an impact for that.
We all know that media has got controlled in Uttar Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh media has been controlled by BJP. Mr. Yogi is able to do that through using all other, weaponizing the officials and others. Media has become one-sided. Now social media, which reports the real issues of people, now they want to control that also. This is against press freedom itself, and we should always be against the kind of attempts by any government. It may be any India alliance or in BJP governments. These kind of steps is dangerous for the society and dangerous for the freedom of press itself.
ट्रोलर्स की बड़ी आर्मी है भारतीय जनता पार्टी के पास। नंबर 1 उनको नौकरी देने का काम है। जो भाजपाई कार्यकर्ता जो ट्रोलिंग का काम करते हैं, उनको रोजगार देने का काम। शिक्षकों को आप रोजगार देंगे, पुलिस फोर्स में आप रोजगार नहीं देंगे, आप अनुदेशक को आप नहीं देंगे, लेकिन आपको जो भाजपाई ट्रोलर हैं उनको आप नौकरी देने का काम करने जा रहे हैं।
I'm being joined at this point by Sanjay Jha, who's an author, as well as PK Jain, who's a former additional DGP for Maharashtra. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Good evening to you both. First to you, Mr. PK Jain, how do you look at what the government's policy now states? I mean, there seems to be every government that's defining their own policies of how to work on the social media, how to expand their scope, influence across people, reach out to people through the social media. But let's start with one aspect, and that is, if there is a post that's anti-national, it could land you in jail from 3 years to life term. How do you look at this as a police official?
Sneha, thanks a lot for inviting me to the show. I am in complete agreement with this proposal of the government. It is a policy. At least somebody has thought of a policy. We have had cases in the state of Maharashtra where the likes of Ms. Chitle was 22 cases were filed against her just for repeating a poem where even Mr. Sharad Pawar had not been named. In that particular case, 22 cases were filed against her. She had to spend 39 days in jail. So now at least there's a policy. The policy states something which can be done, which cannot be done. What is national, anti-national? That of course the definition will also come. I heard your a speaker before me on your program who said eventually it has to be within the parameters of the law. If the criminal law does not define a particular thing to be illegal, then no action probably will lie against that person. So the whatever somebody states or does not state would have to come under the ambit of some particular law. Unfortunately, fortunately for this country and for the world, social media has become extremely powerful. Its reach is absolutely unimaginable. The kind of people and the kind of levels it can go and reach now is absolutely praiseworthy. Now, but the same media can be misused for
True.
inciting communal passions, creating law and order situations. That's why now increasingly you will find the government and the police authorities using or putting a ban on internet as and when an explosive situation occurs at any place. It can be a particular area, a district, maybe the state, entire state. So I think it's a very welcome move that this kind of restriction was required. The calls of Sar Tan Se Juda, the calls of let's beat the prime minister on the road, let's kill him, somebody will hit him with bamboos and things like that. Probably these kind of calls would now be controlled in a state. I would in fact welcome that if this kind of an action is taken in all other states also, this becomes an all India action, all India law or policy. One more thing I would like to place on record
So before
here,
I go
Sneha,
into other nuances, sir, one question to you.
Just 1 minute.
One question
minute.
to you,
See,
sir. Before I
yes,
just
please.
go over Sanjay Jha and allow me, Mr. Sanjay Jha, just give me 2 more minutes. I'll just ask one more question, Mr. PK Jain. Isn't it correct that anything anti-national, an act that is considered anti-national is already catered to under existing laws. However controversial they may be, it is already being addressed, whether it be IT Act, whether it be the business. What is the point of every state coming up with its own set? What does this really mean?
See, I'll answer that question in the Maharashtra Control of Organized Crime Act, MCOCA or MACOCA as it was commonly known as. This particular law put the fear of God in the minds of all the mafiosos and henchmen. So much so that the conviction rate was 92%. It is not that the laws like NSA or punitive laws were not in existence, but this one particular law was handy for Maharashtra police in controlling the organized crime massively in a big way. Similarly, there may be other.
Okay.
See, we have always have special acts for special situations. In this case, the media and certain people were becoming so brazen that they are talking anti-national stuff. They are criticizing the highest office in this country. Not that people do not have the right to criticize. Now people are criticizing the judiciary also. That's fine. But there is, in your heart of hearts, of course, it will have to be meeting the legal requirements also. But in your heart of hearts, you know that this particular post is absolutely anti-national, goes against the interest of your country. Now, even though there is a law which is prevalent at the
Let me
moment,
just get, sir, let me get in Sanjay Jha and I'll get back to you. Let me get in Sanjay Jha. I've given you ample time. Let me get in the other speaker for his introductory remarks as well. Sanjay Jha, if you could come in. There are already existing laws that deal with the so-called anti-national criteria, posts, messaging, whatsoever. You've had courts come down very heavily. Supreme Court itself has come down very heavily on arrests and the way they have been kept in jail itself for a very long time. They have been under very, very strong laws that they have been arrested, and the court has questioned that. Again, does it land at the same question? Who defines what's anti-national and where are the boundaries set? In this case, we don't know anything of it till now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely stunned and shocked at the brazenness of this law. But let's be a little real here. If you look at Mr. Modi's government in the last 10 years, it has had a very blatant manifestation of fascism. Put the opposition leaders in jail, use the washing machine kind of model to terrorize the opposition, ED, income tax, and the CBI route. You've seen how the Congress had its funds locked. Recent verdicts by the Supreme Court, by the way, in the case of Jharkhand, in the case of recently Manish Sisodia, I mean, they have clearly pointed out the Supreme Court has actually been harsh on the High Court, saying that the lone judge did not even exercise the law in the correct way it had to be applied. So here is the point. By bringing out these draconian laws, basically these are, I would say, symptoms of a very insecure political party and establishment, which is very fearful of criticism. So look at it from two angles. If you praise the government, you get a monetary reward. If you're critical of the government, you'll be deemed as an anti-national. Under Mr. Modi's government, before we even get into what Mr. Adityanath's law says, in the current regime of Mr. Modi, you've seen how many people have been harassed, whether they're authors, intellectuals, journalists, film people. Everyone has been basically terrified into self-censorship. Now, just think for a moment, who is going to interpret as to what is anti-national or not? End of, as you rightly mentioned at the beginning, there are multiple laws in this country, including the new amended IPC. But the fundamental issue is, why would a state government suddenly decide to pay, I believe, very, very large sums of money to influencers to promote the government? They're not even, this is like if there are 1,000 people who promote the government, it will
Sanjay
cost the
Jha,
government
allow me
100
to
crores
make
or
one
80
point.
crores.
Allow me to make one point. At least there is, I mean, let's look at the other side of it. Every government does this. Every government, whichever political party they belong to, every government does this. Discreetly, in the hiding, whatsoever. Content creators who are pro-government, who would be backing the government, who are spending a lot of time promoting them, quite openly, quite brazenly, quite discreetly, whatsoever. Every government does that, irrespective of the political party. To play the devil's advocate and moving away from the anti-national, that's a very important concern, and we'll get to it. At least for the rest of the policies, you'll at least give it to Yogi Adityanath. He said it out quite openly. Praisers, promoters, you get the money. You don't get it if you don't do it. And I mean, how many governments have said that? But that's quite honestly how governments function. We all know that.
Well, I don't completely agree with you. Yes, there are cases where governments have been dubious in their own way. But the larger point that we cannot ignore is that authoritarian governments will abuse power. Here, there is a very clear expression, a unilateral expression, that we are now going to create a law. And once you create a law, everyone knows how the police interprets it. I mean, the Supreme Court has had to intervene in all the cases, from the trial court, from the district court to the high court. And finally, individuals get relief when the matter goes to the Supreme Court. How people can really afford that? And you know it, that process becomes a punishment. And here is the larger point. Is Mr. Adityanath not concerned that the broadcast bill, which Mr. Modi's government has had to withdraw, actually he should wait for the broadcast bill to come up with what is going to be the recommendation which the central parliament takes, because it was an attempt to strangulate the freedom of the digital
Important point.
operators
True.
or the YouTube channel news people, because the government is paranoid that they are doing a wonderful service to democracy, which has made this government at the center extremely rattled.
Okay.
That's the reality of our times.
Okay. Okay. Okay, PK Jain, if I can get you in. As a former top police official, let me ask you this question, and I'll take it from where Sanjay Jha has left it. Now, look at the opposition. They are accusing Prime Minister Modi of being dictatorial, of fascist. Look at the BJP. They are accusing Mamata Banerjee of being a dictator, having a dictatorship, of running a dictatorship, of being a dictatorial chief minister. Now, this is an allegation that goes on between political parties, between the chief ministers, between the opposition, between the prime minister and the opposition, and so on and so forth. This is one aspect of it. Then you have the second aspect of it. Even laws like UAPA, people were arrested under UAPA, the Supreme Court has had to come extremely strongly defining what anti-terror is. In fact, crushing down what the police would have claimed as anti-national. For example, the court has gone on very strongly saying being in possession of material that may be considered as insightful is not being anti-national. There have been several such orders as well. So between these two, it's the state and the police here, according to the policy, to define who's anti-national. Isn't that itself extremely precarious? Extremely worrying in a democracy like India. Where is the line? How do you know one person is crossing the line and not? And how do you know you're not going to be subjected to state machinery?
Sneha, it is always subjective. The laws which are implemented, the definition of the law is always subjective. That is why not only at the level of the executive, even at the level of judiciary, you find a guy convicted by the lower court, acquitted by the high court, again convicted by the Supreme, acquitted by the high court, again convicted by the Supreme Court. See, every judge has a different opinion. Similarly, every executive officer will have a different opinion. And that's why the courts are there. If there is a misuse of law, people have paid
and
for it.
That's why,
People
isn't it extremely great? So let's face it, I mean, IT Act has it, BNS has it. What's the point of a state coming in and saying, if you're going to put in anti-national posts, you're going to get into jail for 3 years to life term. That's already there. Laws are dealing with it. Now you're getting into one very unclear language, no explicit details, just a jail term mentioned. That itself, it's ambiguous to start with. What does one make out of it?
No, Sneha, it is not
simple. And as a
simple.
police official, how will you make out of it?
The Supreme Court always comes down very heavily, even on laws like this, even on policies like this. See, the laws which have been absolutely thrown out by the Supreme Court. Let us not say that the law will be absolutely subjective. What happens is that it's a policy which has been laid down. It will take its own time to mature, but at least, in my opinion, a direction has been set. Now that direction will take time to mature. There may be some misuse of these provisions of this policy or law. It has not become a law as yet of this policy, because anything like this to become a law has to get this Government of India sanction. So it is a policy which has been laid down for the government. And I think, in my opinion, if you ask me honestly, I find it's a very, very welcome step. A whole lot of people who are today misusing the social media will think twice before they use or put any post which is either defamatory or which is meant to incite the people into violence or which is outright anti-national. There was, I would say that there was a gap till now. This gap will now be filled with this kind of a policy, and that's why I'm saying that I wish that the other state governments, without going into the politics part of it, they also come out with a policy like this, so that at least or maybe the Government of India should come out with a policy in due course of time, so that it can be implemented all over the country with uniformity and uniform directives. Sneha.
Sanjay Jha, to respond very quickly to what a former top cop is saying, policing aspect, and he's saying this is just a direction. It is not absolutely subjective as it is being made out. Well, beyond direction, there are existing laws which, of course, have already become subjective based on how they are interpreted by police, vis-a-vis the court. And do you want to respond to this?
No, I can tell you that under Mr. Modi's government, India has been a quasi-police state. It is very easy for, gentlemen here to, kind of sing hosannas on this policy. But look at it from the people who have been at the receiving end of the government's wrath. The people who have been targeted by the governments, both central and state. I think it's extremely unfortunate because people like us are very privileged. We have access to, support systems and the lawyers. But I think the poor people of India, the ordinary people, even the middle class, including the minorities, people who really face the brutal face of the onslaught of repressive regimes, they suffer and they have nowhere to go. And I do believe that this whole bulldozer culture, to be encouraging that, is deeply unfortunate. these have ramifications for the long term. I can tell you tomorrow there's a change in government and a new political party decides to get vindictive. You will create a culture of, vindictive and vengeance and revengeful politics. It's very, very unfortunate. I think we have to be a democracy. We have to follow the laws that exist. And I do hope that people will challenge this in the Supreme Court, because I do think that there is a big unconstitutionalism that I can see here. There's a broadcast bill at the center. Let's see where that goes. And any day for a state to unilaterally decide, we will decide who is going to be anti-national. It will make the people of Uttar Pradesh feel extremely fearful.
Give me 1 minute,
I'm unfortunately totally out of time, Mr. PK Jain. Okay, I can't even give you possibly 30 seconds, but about till my director shouts me down, he's already telling me to wrap. Please, sir, go ahead.
I see there are two instances specific. One was that an MLA, sitting MLA, wanted to go to Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's house for agitation. She and her husband were detained for 9 days in the jail. I've already cited the case of Ketki Chitle. See, if it's a question of misuse of law, even the existing laws are being misused. So there's no bar on that. I'm saying that it is purely subjective. And it took the court 30 days and 39 days and 9 days
all right. I
out.
have to wrap.
Yeah, okay.
I have to wrap. But PK Jain as well as Sanjay Jha, thank you very much both of you for joining in, for having a very important conversation. And let's just see how this goes and which way it goes. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining.